Good evening, guys. Uh, I'm having Jean-Francois Gariepy in an hour, and me and Mr. Jared Taylor mixed up some dates, obviously. So we're going to have a live stream tomorrow at 9 p.m. Central European Time and at 3 p.m. Uh, American time or his time. I have to say I'm very very sorry because I can see just by reading your comments that you've been waiting this very eagerly. Me too. Maybe I can read an email a friend from America sent me this day as a consolation. The inevitable result. How could it have been otherwise? No Biden Harris landslide, true, not this time, but there likely will be next time. A President Harris is what this electorate, this very population, this United States of America will choose, will be. For it to have been otherwise, Nixon more than Bush II would have made undoing immigration 1965 and a lot of other kindred matters a top priority. Perhaps the top priority. They didn't. Now we have the resultant America. Can a prominent leader stringing together in public the three words United European Christendom make any good difference at this point? Well, actually, yes. Probably he can. Probably such could influence the course and character both of the American disintegration and of the entire residual and remnant of what is still in buildings and in books and in landmass the mighty fact European Christendom. Praying that God will be with us. This is a friend from America, David. He sent me this email today. I wanted to start my live stream with Jared Taylor with this email, but sadly, uh, yeah, we mixed up some dates and we will be having our live stream tomorrow. Tomorrow, remember, tomorrow at 9 p.m. Central European Time, 3 p.m. American Time, Jared Taylor's time. Well, this will be all from me tonight, unless you'd like to have some Q&A and you'd like to ask me some questions, but I know you've been waiting for Jared Taylor, not for me tonight, and I'll be having Jean-Francois Gariepy in, less than an hour. Uh, Please join that live stream if you're interested in. Maybe I can, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to send you the link to the second stream that'll start in less than an hour. This is 10 p.m. Central European Time and 4 p.m. American Time. Just a moment, please. Let me find it. Dun, 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 dun. No, I'm going to have to enter the StreamYard. So I know you're disappointed because Jared's not going to be with us tonight. He's going to be with us tomorrow. But if you have any questions, I'll still be on for a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to go off this stream to prepare a little bit for the next stream with Jean-Francois Gariepy. If you got any questions for Jean-Francois or for Jared for tomorrow, you can surely ask the questions in the super chat area, and I will ask Jared these questions tomorrow, and of course I will ask Mr. Gariepy these questions later on. Okay, this is the link to Gariepy. Yes, this stream starting in 48 minutes, and the link to it is Carlota Puig. How can I pronounce your nickname? Well, my stream with Jean-Francois will not be about alt-right and dissident right, at least not directly, because Mr. Gariepy told me that he was sick and tired of having to be politically correct for not being taken off the YouTube. So we're going to talk about race, IQ, his book, Theory of Evolution, his relationship towards or his opinion about the so-called new atheism, his opinion about Jordan Peterson. I'm going to ask him a question. I don't know if he's going to answer it about what he had with Nicolas J. Fuentes. Yeah, I mean, you can ask plenty of questions. Pooch, Carlota Pooch. Thank you, Carlota is okay. Carlota, what do you mean with entropy account? I don't know anything about entropy account. Drop a like. Rafael Ramirez, I have a website where you can contact me, but not only that, you can contact me. I can leave my email here. Just let me know if you can see it. My official Facebook page. I'll put the link below too. Just a moment. Once again, guys, I'm very sorry for not having Jared on tonight. I promise he'll be on tomorrow, and we'll be commenting on American presidential elections. Still not over, and we can still remain some hope that a senile pedophile won't be the president of the West. Has Jordan Peterson already made his return now? He has announced it a few weeks ago, right? Yeah, I saw that the stream he did on his YouTube channel. Yeah, he announced that he was back in Canada and he was alive and functional. I'm very interested in what Jean-Francois will have to say about him. Oh, he lately had a conference in Australia. I remember you have said you're part Macedonian. Yes, my mother's Macedonian. What's the issue with Macedonia not opening the negotiation with EU and Bulgaria stopping it yesterday? I thought they are almost same nation. No, they're not. I don't know how they're genetically, but I remember that my mother, well, she never told me anything positive about Bulgarians, although I was a fan of a soccer player or a football player, Hristo Stoichko. He was a Bulgarian football player when I was young, when I was a child. Uh, yeah, Macedonians didn't like or don't like Bulgarians. Bulgarians were considered, at least mythically, as a part of Nazi occupation of former Yugoslavia. And of course, as similar to Slovenes had this impossible choices. Uh, I mean, impossible choices. They were torn between Nazi occupiers and the other occupiers that were the so-called partisans, the guerrilla of the Communist Party that is presented in modern day age and in historical books that children are still being taught about as someone who saved Yugoslavia or Slovenia uh, against Nazis. Yeah, Stoichko played for Barcelona. He spat on rivals and kicked referees a couple of times. Yeah, he had. I guess they are about 25% Albanian. Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say they are. Albanians are just better in demographics as they were in Kosovo. Um, yeah, Macedonians don't like Albanians either. Alban, especially Albanians that live in Macedonia and have Macedonian citizenship. For example, a couple of days ago, this terrorist in Vienna was a ethnically Kosovo Albanian, and of course, Slovene media um, published the article where they only told the readers that the terrorist was partly Macedonian, partly Austrian. That meant he had a Macedonian citizenship and Austrian citizenship, but he was ethnically Albanian. And ethnical Albanians don't consider them ethnical Macedonians. They only use Macedonian citizenship to be considered. But going back to the question, I don't know the situation in Macedonia that well. I used to talk a lot about politics, religion, philosophy with my late uncle, a really smart guy. He was a youth world champion in chess, and I really liked to talk to him when I was a lot younger. We disagreed a lot about a lot of things, but I don't know the situation in Macedonia very well. Sadly, I have to admit it. My parents always raised me as a Slovene, and this is also how I identify myself and how I feel myself, if you like. So I'm not very much interested in Macedonia. Ray Brito, how did you get Jared Taylor to do your stream? I had him on now 4 times. I did 2 live streams with him, couple of streams via Skype. I don't know. Mr. Jared Taylor is a true gentleman. He is a great guy, basically. Very articulate argument, full of arguments. He's rational, he's empirical, he's cordial, and he's being banned all over the world. Which percentage of Macedonia is ethnically Macedonian? Good question. Was Toshe Projski why? Well, I remember my mother saying that he was a part of some sort of a tribe, some sub tribe in Macedonia. I don't know the name of the sub tribe, but according to that, I would say that uh, not sure about his whiteness. Not sure about his whiteness. For example, my mother's family in Macedonia, my uncle I talked about before, they were gingers, um, which is really funny because my Slovenian grandfather was had this really black hair. So I'm basically semi blonde or brown, more because of my Macedonian part of the family, not Slovenian. Although Slovenes are considered to be more white than Macedonians, but I'm probably more of a singled out example. Milo and Gilas. I'm too young for Milo and Gilas, but of course I heard about Milo and Gilas. What I heard about Milo and Gilas is that he was part of the more liberal, I mean economically liberal part of the Communist Party in ex-Yugoslavia. But I never studied uh, his literary writings a lot, so I'd be speculating and I'm not very competent in this area. But you got me interested in this, so I will read a little bit about Milo Angelas. Yeah, he was probably some sort of a libertarian in in a communist party of ex-Yugoslavia. Timo Kinsel, is Jared coming on? No, sadly, Jared's coming on tomorrow, same time, 9 p.m. Central European time, 3 p.m. American time. So my page, my Facebook page. Okay, this is my Facebook page. Just a moment. If anyone needs it. Yeah, this is it. Please press a like, comment if you like it. If you like it, it's mostly not in English, but I probably do have some. I have the last stream we had with Jared Taylor um, on this page. Trotsky eyes come for you all, and you discuss which is Macedonian or Albanian. Okay, this could be a good point, although I would not be so sure if ethnical Albanians in Macedonia are not a part of Trotsky's plan because of their superior demographics, at least superior demographics. See if there are any other questions. Even if US elections were rigged, no judge will do anything about it. Trump's lawyers will achieve exactly nothing. Yeah, I guess we'll see about it. Rune Skitzing, you like, he's asking Marian Tarchea, you like Leiba Lev Bronstein Trotsky? Hi, I'm in Georgia in the United States, Trump 2020. Hi to you, Swamper Dog. Hi to Georgia. So, Marian Tarchea, was this some sort of sarcasm? Long live Trotskyist USA? Or did you mean it? Ahorn is saying, jaz sem pa navijal za Željo. This means he was a fan of Željo. He probably means Željezničar from Sarajevo. Or do you mean Željo from Maribor? Because Maribor also has and had a football club called Željezničar. This was the Željezničar or Željezničar were the clubs, were the football clubs from ex-Yugoslavia. Those were the Eisenbahn clubs. Sadly, but it seems old Joe will be the next president. Yeah. What's wrong with Jared? Nothing's wrong with Jared. He'll be on tomorrow, same time, because we mixed up some dates. Probably my fault. Tell JT I said hello from Austria. Andi, natürlich werde ich das sagen. Dutton, JF, and everybody else use entropy. It is for based people. Yeah, I'm technologically and probably also emotionally a bit of a boomer. So this is the reason I didn't know about entropy. Although I suppose I am semi-based. Entropy is for super chats. Oh. Jean-Francois Gariepy is a goddamn legend. Yes, he is. Carlota Puig, you're a Catalan. Yeah, I'm glad to meet you, Carlota. Let me ask you something, Carlota. I was a fan of FC Barcelona since from ever. When I was 6 years old, I became a fan. And what I would like to ask you, this is a feeling I got through the years, is that are the roots of the FC Barcelona somehow communistic? Would you say that, or would you? shame, yeah. Alesh, have you read The Revolutionary Phenotype? Sadly, not yet, but this is a topic I'm going to discuss with JF also. I speculate that it's somehow similar, although scientifically, biologically based, to what E. Michael Jones is saying. Although I'm not sure. I'm going to have to ask JF. Trump is not our guy. Okay. Zhilyovic. We're having Bosnian jokes now. Mujo, zaskrbljeno pove Hasu, da pride Dunajska filharmonija v Sarajevo. Hasu mu odgovori, ne boj se mu, želja čem je. I'm sorry, guys. We Slovenians always love to have a good smile at supposed stupidity of Bosnian people. Malmö has got its good and bad sides. Who's from Malmö? Uh-huh. Okay, like, there's obviously this. Black pillars are gay. Interesting. Jiří Kočica, my friend. Gilas was one of the most interesting dissidents who exposed the rat aristocracy with the book New Class. Very good analysis of communism in Yugoslavia. Thank you, Jiří. Jiří, would you like to join our stream and tell something about Gilas here live? This would be really nice. So, Jiří Kočica, who commented, is my friend, and I had him on the stream. And if he's confident enough in his English, maybe we can have a stream for you guys about Milovan Gilas. Yeah. Of course, if Jiří is up for it. But of course, I'm going to have, and I can have, plenty of people from Serbia that know Milovan Gilas too. They probably have some experts there, and I'm going to have some streams in English about Milovan Gilas, of course. Trevi, Jared is not on now because he's going to be on tomorrow. I already said to all of you viewers that I'm sorry I mixed up some dates. So he's going to be on tomorrow at 9 p.m. Central European time, 3 p.m. American time. What is Tonga? Marian Tarchea. Rune and Marian Tarchea are talking about Tonga. I have no idea what a Tonga is. Yuji's saying, no thanks, Alesh, I have to do something, but I'm listening to you and I hope that Jared will come soon too. Yeah, Jared, Yuji, you probably haven't heard it, but Jared's coming tomorrow. I'll be having Francois Gariepy at 10 p.m. I mixed up some dates. Jared's coming tomorrow, 9 p.m. He'll not be here today, sadly. So I mixed up some dates. I started a stream, and this is a spontaneous Polynesian island nation, Tonga Kingdom. Okay, thank you. Yeah, no problem, no problem. If you're interested, at in about 20 minutes, I'll be starting my live stream with Jean-Francois Gariepy. I hope everybody got my link to the next live stream. Nothing, guys. Sorry once again for not having Jared on tonight. Please, greetings from Germany, Karl Heinz Hoffmann. Hallo, Karl Heinz. What does the Biden presidency mean for Slovenia? For Slovenia? Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure. On one hand, Slovenia seems to be a small and a benign country, but on the other hand, we are a part of a European Union, and Biden's presidency will probably have some effects on what will happen to the so-called right-wing populism in Europe too, and indirectly what will happen to right-wing populism, traditionalism, conservatism, traditional Catholicism in Slovenia too. I'm afraid they they will censor us a lot more than they did till now. At least I'm afraid of this. I'm not sure if this will happen. Unless you did not get the issue. What do you mean, Marian? What did I not get? Yeah, what it's gonna be about? Yeah, well, about JF's work, about his book, about his views of theory of evolutionism, about his views on new atheism, about his views on Jordan B. Peterson. Maybe I will ask him about his relationship towards Nicholas J. Fuentes if he'd like to. He will be prepared to answer. Do you guys have any questions for JF? Please tell me. Please tell me, Marian. Yeah, Karl Heinz. I had a journalist from Germany on a couple of days or weeks ago from Der Spiegel, Dietmar Pieper. Yeah, he was a really nice guy. He's an investigative journalist. He had some pieces on Sweden and their model of coping with COVID. Uh, we talked a lot about that, but when we started talking about Trump and American politics and right wing, left wing relations, it was clearly seen that he lives in some sort of a left wing bubble. The communism did not exist. Now the Trotskyites implement the communism. Okay, this is an interesting hypothesis. I do think I know what you mean by that, but please do explain a little bit more, Marian, if you'd like. Lügenpresse. Yeah. Yeah, Germany is probably a an American proxy in Europe. By American, I mean proxy of American oligarchy or American deep state and so forth. Uh, of course, Germany as American proxy was not a proxy of America, of Donald Trump. I still do believe that, although Donald Trump was no white advocate, no traditional Catholic, not aware of demographic is faith um, problems, at least not in the way he communicated this with the public. But there was something sincere about this guy. It still is. How's Victor Orban? Bored Jared's coming on tomorrow. Is JF coming on today? Ask him why his channel sucks now. Hey, why don't you ask him yourself? I was laughing when the entire world said we finished the communism. Yeah, I get where you're head, Marian. I know what you mean. We lost Viktor Orban, of course. Oh, JF is here. Of course, you can join us our stream now, Jean Francois. Of course. I'll give you the link to this stream. I'll leave it in the message section on Twitter. So Jean-Francois, you can come into this stream where Jared was supposed to be, and we're also communicating with viewers right now. Yeah, maybe Jean-Francois can explain why he does that. He explained. So, good evening for me, for my Slovenian, for my European viewers, and good evening for my guest, Jean-Francois Gariepy. Okay, it's not good evening for you. It's probably in the middle of the day. Thank you for accepting my invitation, Jean-Francois.
Thanks for having me.
Uh, there, there's a guy in comment section that says JFG tonight your channel sucks now because you self-censor used to be good. You explained to me in the beginning when I contacted you and I asked you if you could talk about this isn't right and alt right and so forth, and you explained to me why you wouldn't like to do that. Please explain that to our viewers too.
Oh, well, there's a couple of subjects I do self-censor on because they were subjects that we could touch upon back in the days, but at this point it's become impossible on these platforms. But I've survived on the internet before these rules came into effect and before talking about edgy subjects, and so I will survive whether I self-censor or not. Now, it may not be your thing, but I would point out that if you were coming to my shows only for hearing the most edgy subjects possible, I don't think that we were made to be together. So it's good that you find your other shows, go on 4chan and Gab and hang out there. I have other things to say that are important, and I'm not for censorship. I will stay here and combat it, but you can't combat censorship if you do exactly what they want. They want you to do the error, to violate the rules so that they can get you out of the platform so you don't have a voice anymore. I won't do this because my priority is existence. And then we can engage on liberty and whether there should be these rules. I don't think there should be rules like this, but they are there. And they are part of, I would say, the impact of what I've done on this platform. These rules exist to keep us from doing certain philosophical arguments. And as we've seen from the election in the US, it's not a problem at all to be identitarian and in politics. We've seen it through the BLM protest. But there is a problem at being identitarian for certain people. And unfortunately, I'm part of these people.
So, how does a specific kind of identitarian that comes from Canada and his mother tongue is French looks at American elections?
Oh, sorry. I thought you were asking me a question. What's your question exactly?
Yeah. How do you look at the American election?
Oh, how do I look at the American election? Well, right now, I mean, what I see is that there's been a process for which we will not be able to attest through transparent review and auditing whether the votes are reliable. And so right now I see the political election in the US as the one most subject to potential fraud opportunities. And unfortunately, I don't think we're going to have the ability to prove positively all the time, like, here's 200,000 votes that were frauded, or here's 6,000 votes that came from fraud. I mean, we'll be able to do small portions of it, but at some point, the burden of proof should be on the system and its transparency and its allowing of opportunities to observe it. Unfortunately, with the mail-in ballot system, it seems that the US has diverged toward a non-checkable system, a system in which there are chains of custody that cannot be observed at all time. To me, a fair election happens when you can have the two parties or three parties, and they can observe the ballot box for 24 hours nonstop. And if they have to go take a lunch, they have someone replace them. There is no there is no escaping fraud if you cannot observe the ballot box 24/7. Because you have to count the number of ballots that go in there, and it has to fit at the end when you have the final count of who people voted for. In the case of mail voting, such a thing is simply impossible. So people are calling for investigation of fraud, recounts. This is all good. But what if the fraud happens when you have someone going to old people's home and forcing them to vote, or even paying them to vote, and they're confused, and maybe sometimes they don't even know what they vote for? That's a much bigger fraud, and I'm afraid that this one, we won't be able to catch it properly.
How is the election system in Canada?
Well, in Canada, I'm pretty satisfied because, I mean, there may be some problems with early voting, but the early voting part is much more like not the mail-in voting of the US, but more like the absentee ballots, where there's a request, You explain that you have a reason to vote early, and then you get your ballot. But as far as the physical voting in person, it is top tier in Canada. I've always been satisfied, although I've been part of political factions that have lost and lost and lost again. I'm satisfied that there was no fraud of the ballot box, that there were not people stuffing the ballot box with fake votes. Because in Canada, you have representatives of all the parties, and they can stand in place and see exactly all of the process. They can be at a distance where they can know exactly how are the ballots counted and how they are rejected. We didn't get this in Pennsylvania, at least, and we may not have gotten this in a couple of U.S. states.
How are the Canadian media? Have they already sent their greetings to the new president? Are they satisfied with the new American president? Are there any alternative media in Canada besides channels like yours?
Yeah, I am alternative media in Canada. I mean, it's as simple as this. In Canada, you have people that I've been actually documenting in my live streams that own a lot of the media that pose as independent, and ultimately you don't have much. So yes, of course, you're going to see the leaders of all the other countries in the planet follow the mediatic announcement rather than the legal one, which is okay when it's conceded. But in my view, when an election is not conceded, when there are legitimate demands made in court, it should be a matter of respect for the process to not announce a president. It should be simply saying Joe Biden has obtained the votes as far as the counts right now go, but we will let the due process happen in courts. We didn't get this, and I'm not surprised. Most leaders of the world are just as biased against Trump as the American liberals. And so I didn't expect any surprise there. There's the Mexico guy who did say that he thought it was too early to congratulate Joe Biden. He wanted to see the process play out. What a moral and ethical guy. It's great to see that. But from Israel, from France, from Canada, what we get is a very different behavior.
Yeah, even Slovenia hasn't congratulated to Biden because we have a right wing premier, Yanis Janša, and Hungary, and this is pretty much about all the countries in the world that didn't. But what would you say? Is there any basis to congratulate him, or is this a scandal?
Well, basis to congratulate him. I guess you can congratulate him for getting the counts. And I mean, there are some people who did vote for Joe Biden legally, presumably. But at this point, given the serious allegations that are popping out, for example, today I've been listening to a training session that they were doing. I believe it was from either Wisconsin or Michigan. And the way they were training the election worker was set up so that they wouldn't be observable. It was made in a way where they were using COVID rules to justify how, okay, so you cannot have someone close to you by 6 feet, and we're going to have you seated such that you are back to back, and so there's no place for the observer. So the whole thing was arranged such that the observer couldn't be standing behind a counter and see how they count. That to me is disqualifying. I mean, for a first world election, I didn't know that this was possible, but here we are.
Have you heard anything about this company, Dominion Voting Systems, that's supposed to be the main company for the software for the elections? And they had many this glitches, at least in Michigan and Georgia, and now it's pretty obvious they have ties with Nancy Pelosi and the Clintons, and some sources say they even have ties with the Communist Party. Some sources say that the Communist Party was the founder of this of this company, even.
Absolutely. So Dominion, I believe that they have shares from Canadian owners, and in fact, Nancy Pelosi has been identified as related to the company in some way. It's extremely worrying, and to me, I've always been worried about voting machines. There's just no way to properly investigate their software. They are private companies that can upload their own firmware and software. Just one day before the election, in one of the states, apparently they got an update just the day before the election. How can an engineer know whether this digital code will be processing things properly? We have no idea. And so to me, the only basis for a fair election is physical media that is transparent, observable, and countable. I mean, we've heard about some people finding remaining votes in lost thumb drives. It's like 3 days, 4 days after the election. Oh, here's a thumb drive with 20,000 more votes. How do you know where this comes from? There's no way to tell. There's no way to inspect, and there's not even a way to determine for a person to know, okay, the button that I've pushed really allowed me to vote for Donald Trump. I mean, you see it in the screen. It will confirm you voted for Donald Trump. But how can you confirm down the line that the counting process of the software will be fair? No one can really test these software. And so we find ourselves with just trusting random engineers. And there's been so much investment by leftists across history. I mean, some of the early voting machines had been straight out funded by George Soros and his organizations. So to me, let's leave these machines aside. Let's stop engaging with them and engage with the paper ballot. When I write on the paper ballot, I know that I'm confident of what I wrote. I know that I'm putting it in the box, and I know that there's someone watching the box for the next 24 hours, so it will never get lost.
There's a viewer that says, "Man, I haven't seen JF in ages. Is he still on YouTube?"
Absolutely. I started a new show called JFG Tonight. I wanted to start fresh and remove some of the associations of my past show because we're becoming so censored that it's not worth carrying the name, the public space anymore. So JFG Tonight is my new show. I'm doing my 25th episode tonight.
And we're all glad. So when I contacted you, I wanted to talk with you firstly about your book, your now famous book. The just a moment. Yeah, the revolutionary phenotype.
Absolutely.
What's your this is the book?
Yes.
What's your book basically about?
Well, my book, I'm a biologist, and my book is about how do genetic layers emerge, how do life forms emerge. So it's a book mostly about what happened 4 billion years ago, and why is it that DNA first emerged? Because DNA didn't assemble itself out of nothing. Something led to DNA, and it was a previous life form. And so I say that these events must be called phenotypic revolutions, and that there's a reason why they happen, and there's a reason why they're rare. And really the reason why they are so rare is that they only happen when a life form starts modifying its own genes. What happened 4 billion years ago is that some life forms wasn't using DNA at all, but started using DNA as a tool to modify itself, and it lost control of DNA. And so I say that we can learn from these events because right now humans are playing with their own genetics, and we will be very soon, or we may have done it already in China, modifying human genetics. And I say the consequences of this are extreme, and we don't want this. So we need to stop modifying genetic babies, or we will face the same consequences that the life form on planet Earth faced 4 billion years ago. We will eventually get destroyed and replaced by whatever it is that we trust to modify our babies. And there's kind of a link to the subject that we were talking about before, because it's a little bit like election security, a phenotypic revolution. If you lose control of the ballot for a second, during that second, there can be fraud. And I would say the same is true of our genes. If we trust our genes to a computer, or if we trust our genes to be meddled with by an external entity, this external entity will commit genetic fraud rather than electoral fraud.
But where do you think there is any theological implications of your theory of, or better to say, hypothesis, uh, and what kind of philosophical implications does your hypothesis have in your opinion?
Well, if you're one of the people who believe that God must exist because we don't have an explanation for the beginnings of life, I guess that my theory has a consequence, which is that, yes, we now have an explanation for the beginnings of life that does not involve God. But there are many philosophical consequences of the theory in my book. Some of it is that uh, human culture is not memes. Human culture is not a replicator. It doesn't interact with DNA in the way a replicator or a revolutionary phenotype truly would, because memes are carried in our brains, and between memes and us, if you will, we are the one modifying memes. We are the one defrauding the memes. The memes are not defrauding DNA. That we can see in all of our human interactions, in which we modify what we say to others, in which we deceive others, or sometimes we have taboos that lead us to not communicate certain ideas. So memes are not these things that copy from brain to brain in a reliable way. To the contrary, we are playing and sculpting human culture rather than it evolving on its own. So one of the philosophical consequences of my book is that memes cannot be seen, and human culture cannot be seen as an independent entity evolving separate from us. It evolves, but within us and as determined by our own interest.
How would you? This is a call to speculation, but how would your debate or conversation with Richard Dawkins on this topic look like?
Well, I don't know if Richard Dawkins will ever engage with the revolutionary phenotype. I hope he does, because my book is a completion of his theory of the selfish gene and a rebuttal to at least one part, which is the part on memes. I guess it would go very similar to the discussion he had with Brett Weinstein, although Brett Weinstein didn't have the right point of attack on memes. Brett Weinstein had understood properly in his conversation with him that memes somehow were failing to be Darwinian, but he didn't understand why. And the reason why is my chapter 9, Trickster Printer, where I explained that memes are essentially like a life form that you would be constantly modifying genetically. It really wouldn't evolve. It would be submitted to your genetic modifications. So I guess that this is what I would bring to Richard Dawkins. And I suspect that he wouldn't find much to disagree with in the revolutionary phenotype, because in the end, Robert Travers, who's a scientist who came up with the concept of selfish gene, which was later rephrased and presented to the public by Richard Dawkins, Robert Travers fully accepts the revolutionary phenotype. So I would suspect that Richard must accept it too.
I watched one of your videos from I don't know how old it is, but you had some at least sociological problems with new atheism and Richard Dawkins. Uh, are your problems with new atheism only of sociological nature or also philosophical? Do they make any philosophical errors in your opinion, or are they only sociologically wrong in the sense you criticize them in your videos?
It depends on what is the scope of what you attribute to philosophy. If you talk about philosophy as being the search for truth, which I would say is more science, I don't think they make a scientific error. The question is there a God? The answer is there's no evidence for God existing. And because we don't create, because of Occam's razor, we would conclude, well, in the absence of evidence, I won't create another entity that I can't explain. And so as far as this goes, I agree with the line of thought there. Where I disagree with is it always moral to tell the truth to people? And is it sometimes moral to self-deceive or to at least have a theory that may not be proven true, but that helps in your life? And to me, religions are moral program for good behavior in life for humans. To me, they are not so much scientific tools that seek to affirm a physical truth about the universe. Their goal and their function in society, to me, is clearly to help humans lead better lives and to direct them toward the behaviors that will be sustainable for them across generations. So I think that evolutionarily we need a software program of that kind, and that religions ultimately evolved to be that way because they helped our ancestor reproduce and form societies that were kind of just.
Okay, in Slovenia, your compatriot Jordan B. Peterson has a lot of fans, or at least had a lot of fans. We saw him a couple of days or weeks ago returning. He announced his return to Canada, and then he published a video on his YouTube channel. You also critiqued him in the past. Could you please, for our Slovene audience and for our audience here, although I'm sure many of them know about your critique, what's your critique of Jordan B. Peterson?
Well, Jordan B. Peterson, my first critique of him back in the days where he had not been taking much political stance yet was that he apparently was reaching extremely good conclusion, but always with the wrong methods. It's like sometimes I would find myself agreeing with, for example, his position on Bill C-16. Okay, it's bad to be forcing Canadian university professors to be dictated the gender of the people they speak to, since it is an invasion on liberty of speech. I was following Jordan Peterson on that, but on the other hand, he didn't have quite the method to reach the truth. He was with his analogies and his metaphors and his ancient books. And I think that his first like flaw of rationality showed up when he faced Sam Harris, and where he started talking about truths, but there was Sam Harris truth, and then there was Jordan Peterson truth. And his definition of truth, as stated by him, was something that endures, but truth is not really something that endures. Something that endures is really something that is fit. It's fitness. So a species that endure, or an individual that lives decent in biology, that's fitness, and we can say that it endures, but it's not what we mean when we say truth. And so there was already rational problems with Jordan Peterson, and it seems that his flooding of his own mind with all these ancient texts had led him toward a different path than the one I would take as a scientist and a realist. And so that's the first thing I would criticize. And then I would say that in the way he aged, that at any opportunity where he could have strongly dissociated from the center and the left and the current paradigm of liberals, he showed that he didn't have the balls to do it. I will take two examples for this. The question of identity and the question of, for example, Faith Goldie. He considered her to be too hot material, and actually participated to her censorship from a panel about free speech. So that was one example where, he's going to act just like any SJW in the end. No matter if he's going to spend his whole day telling you how it's dangerous and wrong, in the end, he sides with them when it matters. The second case where we saw exactly the same thing is Brett Kavanaugh, where a bunch of fake allegations come out about Brett Kavanaugh as he was getting nominated at the Supreme Court. It was clearly fake, because how do these allegations all pop out as he's getting this important post, and as there is so much leftist propaganda against him because he would be a danger for abortion rights? And instead of doing the honorable thing, which is to condemn the false allegations rising, he ends up saying on Twitter something along the lines of, I don't believe he's done anything wrong, but he should still resign. And so even if you don't believe the facts, you're telling me that you're going to side with the SJW on the emotionality of it. Absolutely weak. And so Jordan Peterson is rationally defective, and ultimately doesn't stay consistent with his own lines of thought. So his only function is at draining the potential right-wing brains of the upcoming generation. And they love Jordan Peterson for a while, and eventually they get betrayed. And it's a loss of time, it's a loss of attention, and it's ultimately what we call in politics gatekeeping. He is keeping the gates for a bunch of people who could be directed toward actual, honest, and consistent thinkers.
Do you think he did that purposefully, or that he was somehow hired, or that he was somehow neurologically programmed to be a gatekeeper? Or is he aware of the fact that he's a gatekeeper?
Well, being aware of that is it's a good question. I think that there's just a generation of thinkers who cannot be ever fully rescued from the boomer mentality and the memes that have been dominating society since then. If you're born before the 80s, you have a conception of the world that is attached to this kind of hippie to liberal to openness to diversity progression that just can't be removed from your brain. That's my conclusion, that you've reached your cognitive peak and you've absorbed all of these ideas. And then as we saw the negative consequences of these ideas deploy in society, it could not be removed from a certain part of humanity. Younger people like me, I think that since we rose in the world that was made evil by these values, I think we have a more insight. But if you're attached to this very boomer conception of the world that has progressed into society, this kind of fake enlightenment of the 60s and 70s, you just won't give it up, even if all of the other ideas properly penetrate you.
Yeah, I remember I was able to reprogram myself. I even know some of my friends that are now 50 or near 50 that were able to reprogram themselves, at least in the sense that they were able to critically or from distance look at the so-called post-World War II consensus. But yeah, I would have to agree with you. There are some stubborn boomer brains still walking around, and Jordan Peterson could be one of the owners.
Yeah, and we see this phenomenon in other people, all at different levels. Because I'm old enough to remember a day where Richard Dawkins called Sam Harris the right winger among us. I mean, measure the intensity of this. In 2020, it's laughable. But I don't know when it was, maybe it was back in 2010 or maybe 2008, I don't remember. But he called Sam Harris the right-wing atheist. Unbelievable now that we know what happened after. And so we see this to a certain extent in Eric Weinstein and Brett Weinstein and Sam Harris, they are intellectuals who have gone through the path of the right wing, but only in thought, only in principle. And then they went back to their liberal boomer position whenever they had the opportunity, and most importantly, whenever it mattered, because it mattered how you were taking position back in the Brett Kavanaugh storm of defamation that happened. It mattered when it was about Trump. And whenever it matters, these people show their true colors.
Uh, I mentioned the so-called post-World War II consensus, and we talked about boomer brains and so forth. But to clear some terms and to have a somehow elaborate view of the political reality, what's always been, or at least lately, your view of what the correct view of right-wing dichotomy would be, and what the boomers and liberals are missing?
Well, there can be various axes on which we would define left to right. But generally, to me, a consistent right-wing view includes simply a laissez-faire approach as far as the government is concerned because of the belief in self-sustainability. And when I say self-sustainability, I don't mean a single guy lost in the jungle, but I mean that whatever it is that people need, they can either get it for themselves or organize a community to get it, but that they don't need a overarching and big central government to do it. And so self-sustainability, independence, no need for government interventions, and therefore a strong limit on governmental action for only just applying minimal laws and minimal non-violations of others' liberty. That to me is the function of the government. And the same in the economy. The government shouldn't be a player in the economy. It should just be paid just enough taxes to maintain the state of peace in the world. Um, and then there are also other things such as community, religion, what we call maybe right wing or traditional conservative on the social domain, as opposed to the economic domain. But I would point out that being conservative on these questions or right winger on these questions is merely from the fact that, led to his own, humanity converged toward having these religions. Humanity converged toward having these strong family links because it was the best way to survive in the absence of a nanny state. And so I would say it all flows ultimately from the conception that humans are free agents and able to not only care for themselves, but to live with the consequences of their risks and action. That's what makes a right winger. The rest, religion, family, loyalty, etc., it all really flows from this.
Let's see if there are any interesting viewers' questions. Yeah, someone gave me a compliment. Very attentive host. I like this guy. He processes things instead of speaking. Good habit. Thank you. Oh yeah, this is a question I wanted to ask you. I don't know if you would like to answer it, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What is your relationship to Nicholas J. Fuentes?
Well, Nick J. Fuentes has been an emerging personality back in the days where I was already a YouTuber and running shows, and he was a very edgy guy who was making very spectacular appearances on live streams. So I've had him on many of my live streams with Warski Live and then with the public space. And he's always been a great guy. I've always been happy, and I've always been clear to him that whenever he needed content, I could go on his show. And I went on his show a couple of times, I believe. But eventually he started insulting me, and it lasted for a whole year where he was, every time someone was asking about me, he was replying with ad hominems and saying that I was ugly or that I had yellow teeth, and it was getting extremely gay, to get comments on my physical appearance by a man. I was finding it extremely gay, but even then I was like, okay, he's young and he's crazy. Let him bash on me. I don't really care. I don't have a big ego on these things. But eventually he started attacking my family and started attacking my loved ones. And I've always been clear on the internet, if you attack my loved ones, I will reply with absolute and endless punishment. That means I will do everything I can possibly technically do to destroy you legally. And so after he attacked my family, it wasn't even a clip I wanted to see, but some people around my circles came to me and said, Jeff, look, he's talking about your family. And then my heart turned dark for Nick Fuentes, and I reported some of his videos for hate speech and harassment, and I got him banned from YouTube. Now, it's not something I'm for. I don't like censorship, but I like censorship of Nick Fuentes. It's like I don't like ice cream, but I like vanilla ice cream.
So it was it weren't leftists that got him banned from.
Well, maybe. I mean, back in the days I did that, there was enormous interest, and there were even Antifa people and left-wing people discussing how they were reporting him. But I did my little contribution. He was at the border of the mountain, and I did a little push.
I don't know why I'm laughing at this. I don't know if this is even funny, but obviously it is funny to me. I don't know. I basically like Nick Fuentes, and I'm laughing at this.
Well, yeah. We can. I mean, I'm just telling my personal story with him, but we can also talk about how I believe he's a non-fit person for the future of the right wing in general. I mean, his way of saying, trust the plan, trust the plan. I mean, we're in 2020 now. Joe Biden's about to be president. How's the plan going, Nick?
Yeah. Marian Tarchea is asking, I don't know if this is but I'm asking anyway. Please ask JF, what does he think of Lev Bronstein Trotsky? Do you have
I don't know anything in detail about him other than he's a communist, therefore I disagree with him.
Yeah, the viewer probably elaborated on his question and had something to the... Yeah, Photon is asking, what's the plan? What's the plan?
Well, what's the plan? The plan of Nick Fuentes? Yeah, we don't know what it is. As far as we can tell, Nick Fuentes is planning. He has discussions with Michelle Malkin on Twitter DMs, and so we should trust him that he's about to take over the Republican Party.
Do you think there's any real possibility for America First ideas or identitarian ideas of any sort to become an important part of the Republican Party, or is Republican Party forever lost for anything similar?
No, I think that Trump is the one who showed that you could get close or dog whistle it to some extent, but even that they couldn't tolerate. And so to that extent, I think it's the end of the idea that persuasion can be a path forward for identitarian or nationalist ideas of that kind. I think it's over. Now, it doesn't mean that it can't play roles in American history. You still have people believing these things, and it's still important. And in a potential post-America world, it would be very important because it would set the lines of the division of America if it was to divide. But until then, I don't see a path for a kind of democratic persuasion project.
Do you believe there's a country or area for people to start a new life in, or are we simply doomed no matter where we go?
There is hope, but it's very limited hope, and it is you need some money. But you can still in America drive to a very distant place in the center of America. You can still buy a house in Arkansas, or as I call it, Arkansas, because that's how it would be said in French. You can still go in the extreme northern regions of Canada and find a land for $3,000, $5,000. So it's all possible. But you need to get away extremely far from civilization. What that will mean is that there will be increased costs for maintenance. You're going to have to learn to farm and stuff of the kind. But if you can do it, there's still hope. But the communists are going to get to you at some point. It's just a matter of time. The cities keep growing and growing, and the places available to run to are becoming less and less numerous with time.
JB Wallace asks, ask Papa JF about his theory about chickens using humans for their reproduction, or what is the best argument against vegans?
Well, yeah, that's my theory of the queen chicken. The idea is that chicken are not agents that care for their own reproduction as far as the individual chicken goes. The individual chicken is a sacrifice. It gives its breast so that we can eat it. But that ultimately the chicken was the children of some other chicken. And that other chicken must be the children of some other chicken. And in the chain somewhere, there's a chicken successfully making a baby that will be born for the next generation of chicken in 30 years from now, maybe. So at some point, there is a queen chicken. The queen chicken has its colony of sterile worker chickens, and it's feeding us with their breast. And that's the strategy of the queen. It succeeds at passing across generations, using manipulating farmers with proteins and money. So that's how you can see the evolution of chicken, and it's totally in line with the theory of evolution. We've essentially been enslaved by a queen sterile worker system of chicken and sex.
So basically, vegans are against thriving of chickenhood.
Exactly. Vegans want to abolish this lifestyle, and that, like the kid that would step over an ant colony, we would stop him and we would say, respect the colony of ants. They live that way. Respect them. Don't destroy them. We can say the same about the chicken and their relationship with their farmer slave.
Okay, a little less serious question. Please ask JF if he's participating in No Nut November.
Well, I am a no, not full year. I do not perform acts of sex on myself. Lack of need.
Okay, JF and host, what are your opinions of the theory that the events of 2020 election are coordinated by design to foster doubt in democracy as an institution itself? Is this plausible? Thoughts?
What are your thoughts?
My thoughts? Yeah,
Yes.
well, my thoughts. Yeah, my first question about this thought would be who's the planner in this hypothesis. I would be very interested in the thoughts of who's the planner, who plans this. Um, I'm not sure. Is it the Jews? Is the oligarchs? Is it the Germans? What are your thoughts?
Personally, I don't think so. I mean, just look at how much effort there is being deployed by mainstream media and by social media to. I mean, there's literally a Twitter label saying, "Please click here to learn how elections are safe and secure." I don't think you get this when there is a puppet master controlling the world and wanting you to believe that it's false. I think it's too meta as a theory.
Yeah, I mean, it's always possible that there's a 4D, 5D, 6D, 7D chess. I mean, it's always possible, but I don't know. I would have to be persuaded a little bit more to believe something like that. Yeah, and I agree with you. I don't know. Not sure. Not sure about this. Let's go. Let's go on. Little freak saying we got bigger, gefelter fish to fry. Going after other right wingers is counterproductive. Nick shouldn't have started, and JF shouldn't have responded.
Well, on that, I say long term, Nick doesn't matter really because he's not a strategic agent and he clearly doesn't have what it takes to be any sort of politician. And so, since he doesn't matter and I don't matter because I'm not even in the US, so I cannot possibly be a politician, none of our mutual destruction matters to the future of the US. And what matters in the end is, and the way I see it, if you want to see it positively, my intervention on him is we need rules and we need a movement that where people must be mutually respectful and must not fall for the propaganda of leftists that aims to smear us. As long as I see people in the right wing falling for this propaganda, I will treat them very badly because I know that they are not fit to survive. I know that they will take the side of leftists when it matters, the same way Jordan Peterson did.
Karl Heinz Hoffmann from Germany says, Jeff, your show is great and should reach 10 times the numbers. Do you believe that in case Biden becomes POTUS, YouTube will reconsider their policy when it comes to right wing content?
I think there will be a long-term pressure on the downside of censorship and there might be a relaxation. It may not happen immediately, but I think that slowly there will be less and less craziness on the side of Antifa. There will be less and less obsession. And in fact, here's one big prediction of my model of the world. I predict that in 3 years from now, you will be more likely to be targeted for campaigns of censorship on the left than you are on the right, because the inner fighting of the Democrat Party will be beginning. Suddenly, we will not be the enemies anymore. They will think we're irrelevant. They will think we're powerless. And they will start working on campaigns of users getting together and reporting really the centrist, the center left, and people that are more like Joe Biden oriented. Because their goal will then be to replace someone in the Democrat Party to be more like them, to be more far left.
Yeah, well, Lil Freak continues. You both matter. Many people are influenced by you both. I just think it's a shame to do the leftist work for them.
Well, sometimes work is not linked to what the leftists want, but it's linked on self-improvement. And one of the things you need for self-improvement is to kick and to find ways to exclude toxic products from your body or from your organization.
Does JF know about R&K reproduction strategy?
Yeah, it's a way to see reproduction as being a trade-off between quantity and quality. And so the idea being that if I make 300 babies, I'm a R species. And if I make only one or two babies, then I'm a K species. And typically the K species will spend more time ensuring that their single children or that their two or three children will be more fit to life, that there will be more parental care, more education. Um, Humans, for example, would qualify as a K species, and a frog that makes 300 babies per batch would be a R species.
If you'd be an American, if you'd be a a young man as Nicholas J. Fuentes, what would you do different than him? What would you do different in comparison to current American right wingers, either mainstream or dissident or alternative?
Well, I
How would
don't
you?
think that. I think that it's not so much in the method and what I would do different. I think that the game, that their goal is unattainable. You will not persuade the American people long term to be to be right wingers. It's over. And so what you need to think about is segregation, separation, and isolation. And that would be possible under a project, for example, of secession of a state of the US to form a nation where at least people in that smaller nation would agree toward a right wing direction. But you won't take the entire demographics of the US and shift them toward this. There's just too much pressure towards socialism. It will happen no matter what, and it will happen slowly in front of your eyes as you suffer through defeat after defeat. One of their obstacles was, how do we get our people to even have the energy to go vote? Because if you eat lettuce on an everyday basis, you don't necessarily have the resources to go vote. Well, they found the solution. You can now have mail-in voting. So the representatives of the Democrat Party will knock at your door. They will hold the paper in front of you. And really, all you have to do is sign your name, and they'll even fill the ballot for you. That was the only last barrier to the left's total domination of the US. And it happened this year.
I see there's a viewer that asked a question that about Richard Dawkins, but I guess you already answered that. But I remembered one question I wanted to ask you too. Did you ever consider God or faith or religion, or were you ever interested in any philosophical arguments for the existence of God and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, I'm generally I'm educated as a Christian, and I felt a great presence of God when I was very young. I really felt that God was observing me on an everyday basis, and my scientific direction has taken me on their different paths. But I certainly don't disvalue the role of religion in society. I believe that whether you believe that a God like the one in the Bible exists or not, it remains that the Bible is highly influencing every aspect of my life and my morality, my sense of what's good. Um, and as far as the philosophical arguments for the existence of God, I've always been interested in them, and sometimes I will even debunk them because in the end, I don't care. I don't care if you can prove using some logical syllogism, step one, step two, therefore step three, and therefore God exists. I don't really care about this because to me, religion is not about the factual statement of the structure of an entity above the universe. To me, religion is the way people live, and it has to do with the way people behave and teach to their children how to behave.
Uh, what would we talk about the compatibility of science and some religious or uh, religious or philosophical presuppositions in the beginning of our conversations, but still, uh, what would be the God that is still compatible with what your view of scientific picture of the world is?
Well, I would point out first that there's no science indicating that there's no God. The real philosophical principle that excludes God in an agnostic thinking or atheistic thinking is the Occam's razor. But the Occam's razor is not a scientific principle. It's a philosophical principle, and it's an axiom you have to adhere to engage in science sometimes if you want. But there is no proof that there's not an agent that has created the universe. And there's never been, in fact, um, anything discovered that would even make it particularly improbable. We may very well be in a universe that is a simulation. If it's a simulation, the simulation must be run by someone. And so I don't even exclude the possibility that the entire universe could be contained on the hard drive of some superior entity, some agent of some kind that did it for fun or for scientific research. Since you can't exclude the simulation argument, you really can't exclude the God argument, but you exclude it on the principle of Occam's razor. So you say, well, I will not engage in trying to identify the details of a God for which I have no evidence for. Now that's one path you can take, and that's the pure philosophical path. But then the path that people like Richard Dawkins are taking is often to be a little too autistic about the God that they're debunking. And so they're going to go into the Bible and say, so your God said that he walked on water on this date at this moment. That's impossible because I don't know, the meteo didn't allow it at this moment. And that's getting way too autistic with something that wasn't even in the first place a claim of truth. Although you have some preacher in the US that will tell you, oh yeah, everything in the Bible is literal truth. The earth existed starting 4,000 years ago and that kind of stuff. But the reality, at least in my religious education, which was a French Catholic Québécois church, it's never been the idea that the Bible is a literal truth in terms of a scientific statement about the world. So personally, although I get it that you can catch these American preachers being wrong here and there on facts, but to me, religion has never been about facts. It has been about morals. It has been about how humans live and how they want their children to live.
Yeah, and it was interesting. Interestingly, it was new atheists that discovered the same thing as soon as the Islamistic terrorism began in the West. It seems that afterwards, at least Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris, that was a right winger even before that, they all became aware of the good stuff about Christianity. They all started talking about how the same thing as you've been saying, that it's about morals, about what you teach your children, and that Muslims don't teach their children good things, and so forth and so forth. So Bible has no role in scientific truth check. Yeah, I'm not sure what that means. God is not as the Bible depicts. Katie. JF, you were the pioneer of entropy. Do you recommend it to smaller channels like Alish?
Absolutely. Entropy is a platform that allows people to send money and super chats, and I like its independence of YouTube. And if you're a small channel that doesn't have what it takes to monetize or don't want to monetize on YouTube, that's a good way to have more return because the rate is lower that they take from it, and it goes faster. It can work instantly, really.
Cool. Thank you for a recommendation. This is a wonderful question. Is a universalist religion like Christianity an obstacle on the way to white self-determination?
Yeah, good question. I do believe that religion has had its ethnocentric effect, but has failed at explicitly integrating it in its text. That's because I believe that religions ultimately make you behave ethnocentrically enough for the 18th century. and ethnocentrically enough for even the 19th and the 20th century. But in a world of planes and in a world of instant travel across the planet, I believe that it's possible that certain religions will be weeded out from evolution because they don't equip you with enough ethnocentricity, and other religions will rise in place. You take the contrast, for example, between the kind of low-level hippie-style Catholicism of the 60s and Islam today. And there's definitely less of a push on the Catholics than there is in Islam for intermarriage within the faith. Same thing for certain Jewish communities where they're complaining that 50% of their children go marry outside of their group. So I believe that essentially in a world of villages with 200 people, in a world where you had to travel by horse, these religions were enough. They were ethnocentric enough to keep you aligned to your own genetic interest. But in today's world, they may not.
Yeah, I talked to a priest, to a Slovenian priest, and he told me, okay, he could have been a bit biased because he is more right wing leaning and so forth, and not every priest is. And there are many hippie priests in Slovenia. But this priest that is I consider him my friend, he told me that Catholic Church always used to promote this locality to uh, uh, local communities and so forth. They would never you'd never come to the priest and ask him what to if you were a woman and ask him whom should you marry. He would never say to you go to Africa. They 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 would always say find yourself fine gentleman in your village. And yeah, I think I never heard anything similar to your explanation, but I would have to agree with it. It was ethnocentric enough for centuries, even for thousands of years, and it's not anymore because of the uh, yeah, things changed, and they haven't changed enough in this sense. Although they changed a lot because of the the changing things too much in some other senses.
Mm-hmm.
Jean-Francois Gariepy, in case Biden becomes president, should Trump run again in 4 years?
Good question. I think I would wish a different path for America where it doesn't happen, but it may be the case in 2024 that I'm for it because there's just no other choice or that it's just the best available choice. But um, I think it's relatively unlikely because Trump doesn't have, I think, so much interest. Maybe he has enough ego to believe that he should come back to finish the job to the maximum of what he could possibly do under the Constitution, but I see it as relatively unlikely and perhaps even undesirable.
So, do you have any final thoughts on our conversation, our evening when you came to basically to my other stream where Jared Taylor was supposed to be tonight, but we're going to have him on tomorrow.
All
Uh,
right.
th- Thanks again for
Well,
joining.
sorry for not being here yesterday because I know we had scheduled yesterday, but I was having a cough, so I couldn't come. So I was happy today to replace Jared Taylor, and I wish you a good discussion with him.
Yeah, me too. I hope I can write to you when we can talk some other topics some other time again. Thanks
Absolutely.
for
Anytime.
accepting me.
Bye
Jean-Francois,
bye.
good day and good evening and good night to all the viewers. Thanks for all the questions and thanks for stopping by. Good
Bye
evening
bye.
and good night. Bye bye.